and welcome to the Growth Advantage podcast. Today I'll be speaking to Mike Donnelly from Premier Teachers, a specialist education recruitment company based in Sunderland, from the northeast of England and beyond. It's great to have you here today, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love to get started by asking you to tell me a bit more about your business and your role within it.
Yes, no problem. So my role is CEO of Premier Teachers. We've been going for about 20 years now. So basically my role is to provide the strategic and leadership of the company, and also I do some sales as well within the company.
Great. Could you share your insights on sort of current market trends within the recruitment space, particularly within sort of the education space as well? Any emerging technologies that are perhaps being used across the recruitment sector?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a bit of a growth of video interviews. There used to be a lot of, it was just face-to-face, always what we used to do. Then when COVID came in, there was some regulation changes. I would say most companies now are doing a bigger amount of kind of Zoom and Teams meetings than they are face-to-face. And that's really helped a lot of smaller companies to grow.
Right.
Obviously, it breaks down geographical barriers, where you would have had to drive an hour to meet someone. I remember that even, 5-6 years ago, you were doing that. That was a regulation time. Now you can just do it all over Zoom. And it's really good when people are relocating as well. So someone could be down in London looking to come up here, and you can actually get the ball rolling really fast, with using Zooms. I think there's been a lot more use of kind of AI technology as well. That seems to be into the fore, but I think you've got to use it very conservatively, and you've got to kind of look at the impact and think, okay, is this what I want? But certainly in formatting CVs, that's, I have to admit, that's something I've just started to look at myself, so when you get a CV that's a complete mess, you can use the chat function, chat GPT function. Use that to reformat it. But I think, you've got to be careful, particularly with the summary and profile sections, that you've got to that's where your expertise comes in. Recruiter, and you've got to be careful that you write that and don't let AI write that. So there's probably been the main things. There's a bit of a growth of kind of online booking platforms as well.
Yeah.
I think, it's still in its early days that over time that might become more prevalent.
And so would you say that some of these things are already helping to make it easier to operate right now? Or are there some things that you haven't yet implemented that you're considering trying out over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, certainly reformatting CVs, that's something we're doing online using AI, and also online interviews. We're definitely doing that. Online platform booking of candidates, not so much. We're not doing that. That we do most of the bookings via email and, talking to clients. I think they still want that in this sector at the moment. They seem to want that personal touch. They want your expertise. I mean, there was even just one booking yesterday where I spent quite a lot of time talking about a candidate with a client. I just think you can't really easily replicate that, with just an online booking, where it's kind of the client chooses the candidate and, it's all just done through technology. So I think it's got its benefits, got its drawbacks, and you've got to use the technology to your benefits and make sure you're not, it's not making you look a bit amateurish. If you just use the AI to do everything, it won't do the job.
Yes, it's about finding that balance, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. Still having that human touch and, yeah.
And I think as well, some candidates do still want to be seen face to face. So I think it's being aware of what those candidates want and just fitting in with them. If they want a face-to-face interview, we always offer that. So we don't make everyone do online interviews. Those are probably the main things. The use of share codes and things like that for overseas candidates, that's definitely made things easier as well. Whereas before that's made it a lot safer and easier. There's just been a lot of things happening, certainly on the technology right to work sort of side. You've now got kind of all these right to work checks that you have to do as well.
Right.
If you use Zooms and the Teams. So I think it's being aware of, yes, you can use all of this, but you've got to then pay for the extra technology you need to do the right to work check. So it comes with some caveats as well.
And so, like we said, it's obviously a balancing act, and I guess there's so much choice out there. Or is it to decide which technologies to use and to implement and which ones to leave behind?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think what we do is we will try one new thing, every few weeks, and just cautiously. So if there's free trials of things, like reformatting tools for CVs, we'll try it. If that works well, then we might implement it on a bigger scale. We'll just try things cautiously, I think. So at first, when we started doing Zoom Teams kind of interviews, we didn't do all of them like that. So I think it's just you try a little bit. You've got to train the team up to do them in the right way. As the leader, you've got to be the one kind of showing the right way to do things, making sure we're following all the right compliance. So I think it's just been cautiously trying things, get free trials if you can, go on recommendations if you can as well. I think when we were talking about the right to work check online tool that we use, we did ask around on that one as well, kind of, even CRMs and things like that. I would strongly advise, ask around, talk to people. It's very difficult, even over demos, sometimes to get a real feel. So I think if people have used it successfully and you trust their opinion, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I think like your suggestion of free trials as well, making use of those is really key there, because you don't want to pay for something until you've tested it. Perhaps you make sure that it's a good fit for you. In the industry currently, are there any key challenges that are being faced, and how may these be impacting your business?
Yeah. I think there's lots of challenges in a business like ours. I mean, we've got big competition from other very well-funded companies that can kind of make it a little bit more difficult for smaller players to operate. So I think you have to be innovative, and you have to think about, how you're going to still make an impact, even though you're not as big as, the multi-million pound venture capital backed companies. So I think there's many challenges. There's challenges to get on big tenders. They're very competitive. There's challenges to win the best candidates, to keep a hold of them is another issue. You can get them, but they can be poached away very, very easily. If you don't offer the right kind of package to the candidates as well, in terms of paying, feedback, and looking after them, making them feel kind of well looked after. So I think I think finding them enough candidates is probably the biggest challenge. There's definitely a move where there's a lot of schools moving on to tenders with particular companies, so that's obviously affects the market a little bit. So I think it's you just got to be aware all the time of what's going on, and try and think, where you can make your best inroads, where you spend your time the best. I think that's the biggest challenge for small and medium companies. Where do you spend your time to have the biggest impact?
And I know you mentioned that perhaps is there a slight candidate shortage, people not coming through into the teaching profession quite as much. How about also finding and attracting new clients who want to take on the candidates? Has that changed much over the last couple of years?
I think so. I think clients are a little bit less likely to want to meet you face to face. So we're certainly finding some clients that want to do Zoom calls, Teams calls. We're certainly finding some clients that will work with you, but you have to be on the right tender. So I think it's just you've got to be aware of kind of what kind of landscape they're coming from. What makes them tick really, and how you're going to actually work with them. I think tenders are probably the biggest change. A lot of clients are moving on to big kind of procurement tenders, things like that. So you've got to know what clients are on what procurement tenders, and then when those tenders come up, ones that are on those, obviously you can approach them freely, and hopefully you can win them over in a more traditional way, which is just calls, it's visits, it's drops, it's all of those things.
Right. And so do you have a sales and marketing team that help you with that, or do you outsource that kind of sales and marketing?
Some of the marketing we outsource, so all of the social media sort of side we do largely outsource that, but that can be done relatively cheaply with the right team, right sort of outsource team. Again, people you use for that, you've got to be very, very confident that they're going to convey the right message, because we do give complete freedom on what they write. So they generally kind of run it by me, just a very quick run through before they post, but we let them write what they want, and it's often very effective. I don't have the time to write content like that. That's very time consuming. I think you've got to know when to do it selectively. In terms of the sales and marketing team, with the majority of the work we do ourselves, so we do have our own kind of what we call like batch mailing system. We do obviously marketing on job boards and things like that. We do go out to events. So I think it's got to be a real mix of lots of different things. I think some of it is we put our own training on that attracts candidates in. You could say that's marketing really. So I think it's having a real blend of things, a blend of people that you work with, and making sure you can afford it. Some of the simpler stuff that we did, some of the early days things that we did, was get really great SEO. So, I think you've got to again know who you're dealing with, know what the price is, know if it's going to be effective. So I was just always encourage people to make sure they don't sign up to things that they can't afford. So just be very careful, kind of, because these kind of budgets can just be eaten up so quick.
Yes, of course. And what would you say is your most effective sales approach to bring on new clients and also to gain new candidates to come through you?
I think clients often it is picking up the phone. It is, talking to them. Some of it's timing. You can just time it right. You can, then they're open to having a discussion. But that's a very traditional kind of approach. Also, mailing out, we've got our own mailing system where we can, once we've got the right contacts, you can kind of mail them out. Sometimes that's a candidate, sometimes that's an idea, it's something about innovation, it's solving a problem for them. So I think it's a blend of different approaches on clients. We don't go so much go out to kind of client big events. We used to in the past, but we just found there was too much competition there. So I think we just find doing our own thing, where we reach out to them individually, we go out and meet them, could be in the area, do some drop-off marketing as well. On the candidate side, it's a whole blend of things, I think, from social media to, Google, really good Google reviews, recommendations, asking referral programs, that there's some real kind of incentives for people to refer people in, having great SEO, having a really good, well-structured approach to kind of where you're advertising, where you put your adverts, how attractive, really spending the time to have powerful adverts as well.
Yes.
So I think it's events, it's adverts, it's SEO, it's social media, it's all of those things, which is a lot to juggle, which is kind of why we outsource some of it. The majority of it, though, we do in-house.
Right, so it's a real blend, a real sort of balancing act. So those things all work together to create that inflow of traffic, I guess.
And I think to add to that as well is, being, trying new things, trying a new job board, see how that is, see what the impact of that is before you spend big money. Also, I think some of the job boards we use for a long time is, taking the time out as well, having a leadership position and think, okay, is this good value for money? Do we need to be spending this much on this? Can we cut this down? So we cut down our spends on one job board. And I hope that, I don't think that'll make an impact, but I spend the time to look at it and think, okay, what can we cut down on that to have the majority of the same effect? So I think it's just being really careful with what you do, but also being prepared to, try new things and experiment.
So that fluidity is key. I guess you've got to try new things again, like you were saying earlier, and seeing what sticks and making those changes constantly.
Yeah, constantly looking at what's going on in the market and thinking, are we at the forefront of that? Are we leading the way, or are we kind of behind the curve? So I think training comes into that as well.
Yes.
If you offer training, can be a marketing tool. You offer the right training, people will want to join you just for that. So I think it's using that in a clever way as well. Marketing out what you're doing, how you're going to attract new people into, working in education, all of that sort of side. Can be done in a quite clever way, and you can actually attract people and you wouldn't have otherwise. So I think it's certainly think innovation is really key. So I would say innovation comes into our marketing quite a lot, and it's thinking from a candidate and a client perspective.
And definitely, and with your regards to your personal role within the business, what are you responsible for? What does the typical day look like for you?
Probably best starting on what I'm not responsible for. I think I used to do everything, all elements of the business, but now I I I don't have anything to do with the vet and the compliance side. We've got a team to do that. I do some of the sales, but the majority of the sales is done by a sales team. So majority of my job, or I would say 50% plus of my job, is around coming up with new strategies, looking at what's working, leading the team, holding meetings, going out to events, talking to other companies about what's working for them, what's not. So that kind of network approach, trying to go for the big tenders, just finding out when those tenders are being published, writing those tenders, writing those bids. I think any evaluation of kind of what the marketing spend is, I'm looking at that carefully. I'm looking at gross profit, net profit, balance sheets, all some of the less interesting stuff, but the really important things. I'm looking at an overview of finance and thinking, okay, have we got any clients that are, whilst it's not my main job, just keeping an eye on, if we've got any clients that are really lagging. Also looking at where's the cold spots, where do we need more clients, where do we need more candidates, and just an general overview of, the business and thinking, okay, what's working well, what's not, where do we need to spend more time. I think that's something I've always got to be doing all of the time and to be doing my job really well. And I think cultivating a really good ethos within the team where people care about each other. It's not just a dog eat dog world where we work. We actually really care about each other, whether each other's successful, celebrate each other's success. So I've kind of tried to drill that ethos home and make sure that, it's a happy team. Because, if you haven't got a happy team, I can't do all the jobs and I'll end up doing them all myself one day. So you've got to really attract your team and,
I guess
a
it's
right team.
crucial, isn't it? Like you say, to have that happiness in the team, that ethos where everyone's valued and supported. Out of all of those things that you obviously sound like you're juggling a lot of balls there. What would you say would be the perhaps one or two elements of that take up most of your time?
I think the finance side and looking at where the new growth is going to come from, and analysing, kind of looking at all sectors of the business, the candidate side, the client side. That takes up probably 50% of the time, and I think the other 50% of the plus of the time is probably running my own kind of desk. So I think as well that does keep you very current. If you're still interviewing candidates yourself, you're still doing some client related work, you're still filling bookings, that kind of will engender a lot of respect within the team, because by definition you're not sitting in some ivory tower. You're actually doing the hard miles as well. You're trying to redevelop the business, and also kind of looking at kind of where your lapsed clients are as well, and thinking that's a project I've got at the moment, thinking, okay, we did a lapsed clients analysis. Where are those clients that have lapsed? What can we do to get them back? And I've said to the team, look, I'll do that. I will, if I can get them back. You've tried, let me see if I can get them back. So I think it's having a good project that drives the business forward as well is a good idea. And I think it's just thinking about where the opportunities are all of the time. So this month, where's the opportunities? Next month, next couple of months, where could the opportunities be? Because it's constantly evolving, changing, month to month, and there's kind of seasonality to this business, this education business. So certain times of the year, schools look at permanent recruitment. They won't at any other time of the year so much. So awareness of things like that. When are people going to be panicking looking for jobs when they were trying for permanent jobs? And now that opportunity is kind of largely that window's closed. What can we do for them? So having the awareness, that overview of kind of what's going on. That I think as well, you need to, if you're constantly just doing the day job, you're doing the sales, let's say, you haven't got the headspace for that. So one of the things I have done is just 2 afternoons a week, take a step back from the sales, get out of the office, have time to reflect, have time to look at what's going on in the business, actually have that, hovering above the business to find out what's going on.
Great.
I think if you don't do that, you end up just working on. You don't get far removed enough away from business, even if just for an afternoon, to see you can't see the wood for the trees. You're not looking at innovation. You're not looking at
Yes, I can totally relate to that. It is easy, isn't it, to sort of get caught up in the sort of speed of the business and the day to day, just sort of churning on, and then, like you say, not taking a step back, not having that time just to review things. What things could be changed here, and what's working well, what isn't working so well, etc. On that note, is there anything about your particular role, your day to day, that you would like to change, or if you could offload a certain area in particular, what would that be, maybe?
I probably still do a little bit too much sales, although that's very important for the business. It's very difficult. What you find is, like, as business starts to grow, and you have more leadership, more management kind of roles to do, and just kind of looking at the big picture side of the business. It is quite tricky to kind of do the sales side really well, because that's obviously very demanding, and everybody else that's doing the sales, majority of people, that's a full-time job for them. So I think one day maybe step back from the sales a bit more, and maybe focus more on just the management side. But the business has to be ready for it as well. So I think all you can do until you hit that point is to gradually kind of taper that down a little bit, gradually, have some of your existing team, take more clients on. One of the things we've done recently is look at particularly that, how can I do a little bit less sales, do a little bit more time, just so I'm kind of able to do that side properly.
And so, regarding the growth of the business, what are the most important metrics for you right now to keep driving the business forwards?
I think you've got to have a very broad kind of overview of a business like this to do a really good job of that, kind of
Yes.
driving the business forward. So some of it, the majority is looking at number of candidate registrations, looking at time to clear the candidates, looking at that's on a weekly basis. And we're looking at the number of bookings, whether it's going up, whether it's going down. We can see that on our CRM. We can see also where roles are coming in. I keep a very close eye on, where those roles are coming in and if we've got the candidates. So looking at those cold spots, looking at how we can fix that issue, making sure we've got of the right people in the right areas to fill those roles. And then looking as well at, the clients and thinking, okay, if we've got areas where we could develop that area, and that's on both a candidate and client perspective. So I think those are the main ones. Your GP, your net profit is key as well. It's something we look at on a monthly basis. We do a quick analysis on that through monthly management accounts. I think that's something, if you can afford to do it, because you don't want to get to the end of the year and think you had a better year than you had, and then by the time the annual accounts come out, it's a different picture. By doing monthly management accounts, you can see the ebbs and flows much better. You can see anomalies much quicker. So I think things like that, those are the kind of main key metrics. Whether also, if you're trying to develop one side of the business, just keeping if that's a new sector or a sector that's been a bit lower than where you want, just kind of keeping a really close eye on that. What can you do to support that? How's that going? How's that sales consultant doing in that? So those are all the things we'd look at.
Sure. My next question was going to be around this of monitoring the financial performance. And I think you've answered that. You make sure that you're checking that regularly, at least once a month. And then what would you do if, for example, you think that something needs improving? Is that sort of more sales outreach, more posting on social media, that kind of thing?
I mean, just a really concrete one on the financial side, I'd say, is looking at what your average net profit is per booking, and actually think, okay, is that where you want to be? Is that where the market tolerance is, or could that be slightly improved without kind of upsetting the apple cart? So that's something we did a while back, and we did actually make some tweaks and changes, and that made quite a big difference to the business. So something as simple as that, actually thinking as well, it's not going to, you need to be very careful not to, deter clients, from using you, but there may be a tiny bit of movement you can have on that. Whilst it's kind of fairly small on an individual booking over lots and lots of bookings, that could make quite a big difference to your bottom line. So I think
Yes,
that's important. I think checking monthly whether those margins are staying roughly the same, or whether they're being eroded. If they're being eroded, what could be the cause of that? So is it, candidates asking for more and more money, therefore we have to drop the profit margin? What is it that's causing that? So I'd say those are kind of key things, but there's so many things to keep an eye on. That's just one example.
It's really good to hear that you're keeping that constant eye on the ball there with that financial performance, which is obviously key to the growth of the business. And looking to the future now, what are your business goals for the next 6 to 12 months?
I think the next 6 to 12 months, keep the team doesn't need to necessarily grow right now. I think we need to establish some of the desks a little bit more. We just reorganized the team a little bit, so there's some new desks that are being run that could be developed much more. So I think we're going to just see what the impact of that is. If that all works well and then profits start to go up, we can, after the first 6 to 12 months, then we can look to hire, I think. So that would be the next kind of thing to look at, kind of where we are after 6 to 12 months of the impact of some of those changes, which actually didn't cost any money.
Right.
And interestingly, one of the changes actually came internal. One of the team members said, look, if I change my job, that allows somebody else in the team to change theirs. I think that might make a difference to the team. So we're able to kind of do some structural reorganization. I didn't want to suggest that because I feel like sometimes that needs to come from the team themselves and the feeling, but it was, that seems to be starting to work. So that's good to see.
And that shows obviously that the team are comfortable to be able to approach the senior management to those changes, which obviously shows ethos within the team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's a lot of unknown about that as well. That's quite a big change. People's job titles change and the key functions within the day changing. And there was kind of everyone was very keen to just give it a go. Even to the extent of, whilst we bed this in, it might mean we need to do a few extra hours, if we're getting behind with things. So I think that was really good to see. It was nice to see that come from the team versus me, always having to suggest things, which is, I think it's a good sign. It shows that the team's maturing a bit, able to think for them. That when those ideas start to come from the team themselves, you're hopefully onto the right.
It definitely suggests that there's synergy there and that people are happy working alongside each other and adapting as a team. That's really good to hear. Further, longer term, where would you like to see the business in, say, 2 to 3 years?
I would like to see definitely further development in the primary sector,
Okay.
possibly more in the FE sector. I'd like to just get on some bigger, some further big tenders, maybe move south a little bit towards kind of the Yorkshire area. We're almost certainly going to have to grow the team to implement a lot more growth. So I think kind of try to get one more member of the team, maybe look at kind of one layer of management below myself, further layer of management, I think could be a good thing to do. But I think the main thing to do now is not change things for a while. I think if you're going to go and restructure the team, let that bed in, see what the impact of that is, and then in a position whether you're in a position to kind of start to change things again. So I think that's the other thing I'd say is small business change too many things. That's a recipe for disaster from my experience.
And have you got any examples of things that you've tried to implement before in the business to achieve your business goals that have proven perhaps less effective or successful?
Yeah, definitely. I think my biggest learning experience was when I did raise some funding to launch a education recruitment platform and app, which was
Right.
pretty innovative, but it had a lot of strengths. The idea was to launch that nationally. I had a developer on board that had the right ideas. I think the concepts were there, but I think trying to do that alongside trying to run a traditional recruitment business, I think you just haven't got enough hours in the day. I
Yes.
think we would need to have had much more funding, much bigger team. That would have almost needed to be almost a separate company that somebody else runs for you with a very large budget to develop that technology. So, we did really like the idea of that tech, but I think the one thing I've learned is that you can't be all things, and do them really well. So stick to one thing, do it really well. It's probably the lesson that I learned. And technology development, tech business is a business all of its own. I think that needs a whole new person to drive that with a whole new budget and everything else that alongside.
Totally understandable. Is that something though that in say 3 years' time, if the business has grown sort of in the way that you'd like it to, that you may revisit?
I think we would with the right funding, with the right kind of person. You probably need an extra people management on the management team who particularly want to drive that. The technology's there, it's developed. It's just I think to roll it out and to make it work in the way that it needs to work, it needs a lot of money. But I think there's always the potential there. But I think the one thing I learned was trying to do two different types of business. There's cross pollination between them. I think it almost became a distraction to the other. So I think it's very difficult, and you've got to be careful with your time. I think the other thing is the temptation was to just work and work and work. So you did the day job, you did a bit of work on the technology side. Then you just work into the evenings, the weekends, and everything just blended it. The work just became, 24/7 things, trying to get this app launched. So things you've got to be prepared to sometimes go, okay, maybe this is just too much and take a step back from it.
Yes, you have to be careful, don't you? If you've got your fingers perhaps in too many pies, that burnout can happen. And obviously, I think, it's a great idea to really pinpoint your focus on one area, especially, like you say, at this stage while you're still growing and developing and potentially, like you say, if you get to the point where you can have another team that comes on board to do that kind of software app or whatever.
Yeah.
For the future, but I really like your style, how you're focused and sort of dedicating everything now to growing this section of the business. And finally, is there anything else, Mike, that you'd like to share about your business, where people might be able to find you, any events that you've got coming up or anything else at all that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've got an event on Monday at the University of Sunderland we're going to. So any primary teachers, we might see you there. We've got plenty of adverts live on various job platforms. If you just search Premier Teachers Northeast, you'll see us. I think we come up as number 3 or 4 on the pages. So do have a look at the Google reviews. I think that kind of reveals a lot. That's real honesty. That's what people think, both clients and candidates. Do have a look at the testimonial link on our website as well. That's more clients and schools. Candidates and schools. So I think on both sides. So yes, I think if you want to get some work in the Northeast, whether that be a teacher, nursery nurse, TA, everything up to working in colleges, do get in touch. And if you're an enthusiastic and hardworking recruitment consultant, we'd be interested to have a chat with you as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Mike, for your time today and for sharing your business insights. It's been great to hear about it, and I wish you every success for the future.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.